Welcome to the Growlers and Gremlins podcast, an alcoholic adventure in cryptids, paranormal, and the occult. Coming to you weekly from the heartland of America.
Welcome to Growlers and Gremlins. I'm John, and joining me this week is...
Brian.
You've just given up on titles?
Yes.
All right. Jason, I am the analyst. I almost forgot my own title.
I'm Victor. I'm the diversity hire here to increase the melanin count.
Marginally.
A decent amount.
I'm glad he made that joke before any of us had to.
Yes, Victor, you are marginally brown.
It's around like 75% or something.
No, the titles, I just bounce in and out of them. Some episodes I do it, some episodes I don't.
I've seen mixed people that are darker than you.
He is a mixed person.
Well, I don't know that.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. You've known him for so long.
Yeah, but I haven't met his parents. I met his dad for the first time like a month ago.
Yeah. Anyway, beer of the week this week is King Louie, which is a peanut butter banana chocolate stout from Books and Brews in Brownsburg, Indiana. Let's get this thing open.
Well, to be fair...
Ooh, it made a nice little... when I opened it.
We went to their pub in Brownsburg, Indiana. Is that where they're actually located? Or where they're actually brewing?
I don't know, but that's the location of the one that we went to.
That's the only one that matters.
I believe there's one in Carmel as well, but I don't know where they're actually headquartered.
Very shaky.
It's heavy. It's a full growler, and I'm trying to get it in the mic.
64 ounces.
I'm trying to get it in the mic, and look at how small these finger holes are. I can put two fingers in there.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Oh, watch the tech.
God, that's hard. You're gonna have to grab that and suck it.
Oh God!
Oh no, it didn't overflow. I'm in master. Now this one will overflow.
Here.
Okay, so
you pour your own, Victor.
No.
You pour your own. It's the last.
Do any of you guys listen to the Beerist podcast?
No, I don't listen to beer podcasts.
So supposedly,
they're douchey.
You take and you get a little oil from the side of your nose.
I absolutely hate listening to beer reviews.
Oh, it's a review podcast.
No, I mean, I didn't actually listen to them directly. I listened to the Modern Rogue, and they were guests there. But supposedly, you get a little bit of oil from the side of your nose, and you touch it to the foam, and the foam will completely
Well,
that was a fucking lot. Oh wait, it did that. Okay.
Brian, what did you do to yours?
I poked it, and it just...
No, I know, but you have like 2 inches of foam up there.
Yeah, it headed up real bad.
Interesting thing is that like peanut butter, chocolate, and banana mix together so well that I can't pick out any one of them in here.
Yeah, it's just a good beer. I don't taste any of the...
I can taste the combination. I can't be like, oh, there's banana, there's peanut butter, there's chocolate, but like it just tastes like that mixture, and I'm so used to that I don't know, it's good. It's really smooth.
Beer isn't enough for Brian. He's got to have a monster as well.
Yep, gotta have my boomer juice.
Watermelon monster? Was that watermelon?
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
It's actually pretty good.
I know, I've had it before.
So what's our topic today?
So this week I wanted to talk about tulpas, which is it's a pretty interesting topic because...
Is that like a chalupa?
No, it's a tulpa. So I started researching it because... I've always known of tulpas generally in reference to like when people talk about like Bigfoot or Slender Man. Some people say, oh, maybe it's a tulpa. And researching it, I found a whole other side of it. There's a whole community revolving around tulpas that is really strange. So from the start, tulpa is a concept in mysticism and paranormal of a being or object which is created through spiritual or mental powers. It comes from the Tibetan sprolpa, which means emanation or manifestation. So originally, this comes from Buddhist monks that would create tulpas for the purposes of introspection and subconscious exploration, treatment of phobias, social anxiety and depression, companionship, mental automation of tasks, altering one's personality, reaching various kinds of enlightenment, and unlocking brain potential. So a tulpa is basically these monks would, in its simplest form, if they gave the example of if you had a fear of spiders and there was a spider nearby, you would have your tulpa approach the spider to tell you there's nothing to fear. So a tulpa is basically like an imaginary friend that you would project, you'd see it, and it would do something, or you would have conversations with it, just kind of a way of talking to yourself for introspection. But it turns out there is a whole community of modern, what they call tulpamancers. And these are people who believe wholeheartedly in tulpas. And the interesting thing is that they say in these modern communities that tulpas are a mental construct designed to appear as an autonomous, sentient entity to the practitioner. Well-developed tulpas are often reported to be able to appear to their hosts as separate conscious entities, living within their brains, capable of independent thoughts, actions, memories, and feelings. It's speculated that tulpas act on the same mechanisms that allow hosts to experience subjective consciousness, but the exact nature of what a tulpa is and mechanisms on which it acts remain subjects of speculation within the tulpa community. So
okay, so say I'm a tulpamancer. What am I able to, like, am I conjuring something that other people can see and interact with?
Well,
or is it just in my head?
So there are different levels of tulpas. Basically, it starts with sort of having a conversation with yourself in your head. And then you move on to, there's like a life cycle, sort of a development of a tulpa. And that starts with visualization, of being able to actually see the tulpa as a physical being in the room, only visible to you. Then it moves on to independence, where the tulpa will act independently of you, like an imaginary friend for a kid. Only a kid sees it, but it's something they control. Tulpas supposedly eventually can act entirely independently, have their own thoughts and feelings, and you can have full conversations with them, and they can do things without you being in control. So
how is this different from daydreaming?
Well,
that's what I'm wondering. It sounds like a hyperactive imagination, and is there any like tangible way to know if it's a thing?
Supposedly some tulpas can possess their host and control them, which is strange, but the people in the tulpa community, these tulpamancers, they believe that what they are creating is a new and independent life form. It is a conscious living being that just has no physical body. But some people say that a tulpa can become a physical being with a physical body if enough people believe in the tulpa.
And that's where like Slender Man comes in.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying, because enough people on that message board lent credence to that story, they manifested it into the world.
Yeah, if enough, the idea is that if you can bring something into being via your own thinking, your consciousness, your belief in it, well, on a mass scale, if everyone believes in something, it could manifest in reality. Because there is science to show that our thoughts can affect the universe, and
I had a political thought, but I'll keep it to myself.
Okay.
Let's say there's a...
Wait, so I'm just curious if it was like everyone believes it. It's almost like if everyone believes it, then it is a thing, but it's not actually created. It's just everyone believes it, so there's nobody who doesn't believe it. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
The idea is that if enough people believe in something, it will physically exist. It will come to be in the universe. So
gotcha. And that can be intentionally and unintentionally. Like I'm not trying to manifest this, but I believe it exists, and so does like 100 other people.
Bigfoot.
So it happens.
We don't really have any credible scientific evidence of Bigfoot, but so many people believe that he's out there, and we have sightings all the time. Which it could just be everybody caught up in it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw him," but they didn't. But it could be that this creature never did exist, but the rumor started. And it spread so much and enough people believed in it that it actually came to be, and that Bigfoot does exist, but because we created it.
Was Bigfoot the one that was determined to, like, that first initial video to 100%, like the guy came out and said like it was a hoax, or was that a different one?
Are you talking about the famous Bigfoot video of him walking from a distance? Yeah, that one was a hoax.
And so it's like, but that's what started it, right?
I don't think that's what started it.
But that's what started, like, the mania, I guess.
The Batutu started.
Probably.
Yeah, well, because
we'd have to do a Bigfoot episode to really
no, I don't know.
That.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of what they talk about in, like, modern, like, 24 news cycles, where everyone hears the initial story. They don't hear the retraction, right? So everyone heard about that video, but not enough people heard about it being a hoax. Mm-hmm. So it inspired belief in this thing to where it was like strengthening this tulpa. Am I saying that right? Tulpa?
Tulpa. Yeah. Tulpa.
Sounds like a light Mexican cuisine.
Tulpa, Tulsa.
Yeah.
Chipotle.
So one of the theories as to how a tulpa could become its own conscious being is through mirror neurons. So according to this hypothesis, a tulpa works on the same mechanism that allows humans to empathize with each other and respond to feelings and actions we observe, as if they were our own. According to this hypothesis, a tulpa is created by constantly stimulating mirror neurons until they form advanced networks of their own, capable of acting on their own volition. So I looked that up. I was like, what's a mirror neuron? Well, that's a real thing. A mirror neuron is a neuron that fires both when an animal acts and when the animal observes the same action performed by another. Like monkey see, monkey do. And like the idea that they say that you can actually burn more calories by thinking about exercising. Because
I'm living proof that's false.
Well, it fires mirror neurons. If you see somebody exercising, your brain will fire the same neurons, tricking your body into believing that you are exercising.
Yes, not the same as, that's not relative to actually working out. That's relative to doing nothing.
Yeah.
But I've also heard that's a good way that, like, kids and babies learn, is by watching you actually act out what you're doing.
So the idea is that you're creating a being that runs on mirror neurons, and those become more and more developed, and through observing you do things, they develop their own ability to do things and to think independently of you.
Yeah, it sounds like the progression of like an AI or something.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, like, in these Tulpamancer message boards, people talk about like how serious of an undertaking it is. If you're going to create a tulpa, you need to understand that this is a life. Do not let it die. Don't stop thinking about it, because if it is an independent being that acts independently of you, then it's not under your control, and you need to ensure that it stays alive because it's reliant on you.
So to me, this sounds like there's an element of danger to this.
Yes.
If it's just a chunk of your brain that believes it is this other entity, what prevents it from becoming the primary entity of the brain?
Well, that's where it would be, and where they said that some tulpas can possess you. It can take over you.
What are some examples of, like, good tulpas?
Chappie.
Santa Claus.
Oh, okay.
Santa Claus could be considered to be a tulpa because, you know, like, so many kids around the world believe in Santa Claus.
Be Santa Claus, because, like, Saint Nick was a
you mean
person,
like Jesus?
Right,
another good tulpa. Well, no, Jesus is a historical figure. But
like
another good tulpa possibility would be God, because you could argue that because
Beelzebub,
the majority of the world is religious and believe in a God, that because of that, then there is a God.
But would that work if our belief is that God created us, not that we created him or her or whatever?
Well,
I don't want to get into that
that's
conversation.
A whole thing there, because like if we created God through our belief in him,
that means American Gods is a real historical show.
But if we created him through the belief he created us, it's like a loop. Like, you know, there is no chicken or the egg. It's just, it is, you know, which kind of fits with the whole idea of God, is that, you know, God is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a whole other way to look at it.
But there is no question, for those who believe, is there ever a question of chicken or egg? Like, it's always God and then us.
But what if the two they're so codependent?
Yeah.
You know? It's weird. I mean, because, I mean, if that were true, if tulpas are a real thing and that God was a creation through belief, then...
No, I get how that could be argued as
people
a tulpa,
could technically kill God.
Yeah, if we stop believing.
Yeah, if the vast majority of the world stopped believing, because tulpas, if a tulpa's creator or creators no longer believe in it, it will cease to exist, because there's no.
And that's what happens with imaginary friends.
The idea is that the brain waves are what creates it and gives it power, and then you know, you could say a tulpa could just, in order to gain a physical body, because I mean, it's not going to materialize a physical body. It could take possession of another living thing. Which brought me into Jason's episode from a few weeks ago about demonic oppression. It's like, what if a lot of these tulpamancers, like, literally have a demon hanging around them? And they're like, because like, in these message boards, they talk about, like, people use their tulpas as, like, friends or for cuddling. Like weird stuff, because a lot of these people are very, very lonely, and so they create these things to have companionship. And I don't know, it's a creepy,
Can't you just
creepy
be
thought.
normal and get like a sex bot or whatever? Those, I feel like that's a little
Those
more
are like
normal.
$5,000. Those are expensive. An imaginary friend you can make up yourself.
Okay,
Have you been browsing?
I have looked. They are very. They get very detailed.
So say Brian takes his body pillow.
I don't have a body pillow.
I do.
So
I actually.
he has conversations with it.
Pillow.
He loves it, and
You think my body pillow is going to become sentient and talk to me?
Yeah, like,
but that's already an
in
object.
your mind, it could become a sentient living being.
He could project his tulpa onto it.
But then where do you draw the line between what's in your imagination and what's like actually manifesting?
That's where it gets to once a tulpa is observable by someone else, well, then it exists, you know?
Yeah.
Because most tulpas, they only get to the point where only the creator can see them. But more people believing in it means more people can see it. And like fairies, don't they die if like people don't believe in them or something? Like, isn't that like a Disney thing?
I have no idea. I have no
that's
idea.
not.
It was in Peter Pan.
It was in The
Something
Office.
Are you thinking Peter Pan? Like she had to clap to bring Tinkerbell back, but I think that was just Tinkerbell fucking with her.
Did Tinkerbell die?
Yes.
Wendy smacked her with a book in the beginning of the movie, I thought.
I just remember all they had to do was believe they could fly to fly. And that was
they had to be sprinkled with powder, didn't they? Or something like fairy dust?
They had to be sprinkled with fairy dust in order to fly to Neverland.
Tinkerbell's ass.
Well, among other places, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I thought of
A little crop dust.
a bad joke that I don't know if you guys will get it or not, and you might have to edit it out if it's not okay. But when you talk about Disney and like killing fairies, and I was like, well, Disney has a lot of associations with the Nazi Party that has a history of killing fairies.
All right.
All right. A lot of trainables taken out there too.
I guess that's up to you on deciding on whether or not to keep that.
Yeah. But one of the other things that came up was the idea of, trying to analyze it from a psychological perspective. They talked about the idea of the bicameral mind theory. And bicameral mind is that you observe your own thoughts as the thoughts of something else. So,
that's not what I was thinking it was. I thought that was when the connective tissue between the two hemispheres is broken, and people demonstrate two separate personalities.
No, that's that multiple personality disorder or whatever, which isn't real. We could get into that. We could do a whole episode on that multiple personality disorder, which is dissociative identity disorder. There's a lot of stuff in the psychological community about that And like there are a few doctors that will deal with patients with that and be like, oh yes, it's for sure real, my patient, but the vast majority of the experts are like, it is not real, it's delusion, they do not genuinely have multiple personalities. But who knows? But
what if those are all tulpas?
Yeah, because bicameral mind theory is that like it goes back, they're talking like caveman days, when humans became conscious and began to think thoughts. They didn't recognize the thoughts as their own. They would hear the thoughts in their head and believe that they were getting instructions from a higher being and follow them without question.
I'm gonna say so, I can't believe
it could be a bicameral mind
that was
type
back
thing,
in like caveman times,
where these people believe that their tulpa is sentient and having its own thoughts and is talking to them, but really it's just all their own thoughts.
That makes some sense, I suppose. But
you think about that way back in those caveman days, where like you just start thinking and you're hearing this like narrative in your head.
Well, they wouldn't have narratives, they would just have thoughts of actions.
Yeah, and
I
then
need to do this.
Do the action, but like they're taking it as a command given to them rather than something created in their own mind.
I don't think that at all.
It's interesting to think about.
They would understand what they need and they would just know to do it.
But wouldn't they be born with consciousness? It's not like they just develop it.
There's a difference between human consciousness and like animal instinct.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. There was a time in human history when we made that shift from animal instinct, I'm hungry, I'm tired, to thought and actual consciousness. So when that occurred, they didn't know what to think of thoughts.
Yeah, but
because they'd never thought a thought. What do you think about thinking thoughts? But did they develop
it? Like, did one Neanderthal just start having consciousness, or was one born with it and that just kept going? Because if I'm thinking someone who is born with consciousness, then they always have it. And so, I guess they don't really know how to explain it.
What age do you become aware of your own consciousness?
Yeah, I don't know, but that's what I was thinking.
Sure, yeah, we're
like, do they always think of it as like some intercom that's just demanding what they do?
It just got me off a mental rabbit hole here. Little issue I just thought about because I was thinking about consciousness as a child and when you become aware of it. Well, the problem is that the memories are no longer stored. And so I was thinking, without memory, is there true consciousness?
Well, if that's the case, then most pets have consciousness.
Well, because aren't all thoughts that you have the memory of the thought?
No.
Well,
think about it.
You can create new thoughts.
I know. But your perception of the thought, your understanding of the thought is the memory of the thought that was created.
When you're thinking about a thought, you are contemplating a memory.
Yeah. So without memory, so think of dementia. Have you lost consciousness?
But you would say that they're unconscious? No.
Well, no, not unconscious as in like they're knocked out.
Yeah, but they're like empty.
Yeah, that's almost like an empty shell at that point.
I mean, but that's what we're seeing like physically from the outside looking in, but what are they thinking on the inside?
I don't know.
We don't know. Dementia might just be their inability to portray it or whatever.
Perception of things changes too. Did you ever see the thing of that artist who started getting Alzheimer's? So every year he did a self-portrait of himself.
Oh, I have seen that.
And the final portrait was just like this gray and black, like blob, scary looking thing, because like he just couldn't, his own image of himself changed as he lost the ability to hold memories. And so that's like really strange. Looking in a mirror, drawing what he sees, he saw an entirely different thing. There's a
but is he seeing something entirely different, or is he unable
to draw?
Because that's kind of a weird...
We don't know, because how could he explain?
That's kind of a weird way to look at dementia, is that it's not a loss of cognitive ability, it's the inability to portray your cognitive ability.
But, well, I don't know about that, if it's an inability to portray it entirely, because like an inability to portray your cognitive ability would be, something I would associate with like cerebral palsy.
Or like a stroke. Like where
people with cerebral palsy have functioning intelligent brains, but their body's not able to form, but it can even be words,
it can even be like expression ways. Like with certain types of aphasia, like after having a stroke or something, is that you can think every single word, you can communicate within your head, but you cannot get it out.
Like nonverbal autism sometimes. You know, those are kids that are really smart, and inside their brain, their thought process, their functioning is normal, but they're not able to communicate it. And it's, you know, I see dementia sort of similarly, that like, that's, you know, that's a scary thought, you know, as you get older, to not be able to communicate your needs and things like that.
It's much more comforting to think that they're empty and lost than all there, but just unable to communicate it.
Yeah.
Like being trapped inside your own mind.
There's a musician.
Locked-in syndrome, where you just can't move your body. You can't.
Yeah.
The mind's still there, but it's not able to communicate that it's there.
There's a musician in the UK called The Caretaker, and I told Jason about this the other day. He made this album that's like 6.5 hours long, and it's supposed to be a audio representation of the slow decline into dementia. And
that sounds terrifying.
If you listen to it, it's a really strange experience. The idea is that they created this whole idea around it, that like, you're on a large boat, like a cruise ship, and it's like the 1930s, but you don't know how you got there, and you haven't seen anyone else, but you go to the large ballroom because it's comforting, because there's music playing. And so it starts off with like this, you know, 1930s kind of ballroom music, and you're hearing it, and just for 6.5 hours, the details just start slipping away. And finally, at the end of the whole thing, it's just like this droning gray noise that, like, when you listen to the whole thing, you get to this point where you can't remember what it used to sound like. It gives you the experience of sliding off into dementia. It's horrifying.
That's crazy.
It's a really strange experience to listen to.
You should share that with me, because that's really interesting.
It's called Everywhere at Once in the End of the World or something like that. I gotta look it up, because I don't want to, you know.
You can't leave the listeners hanging.
I can't leave the listeners hanging here, because
so like, looking that up,
people should check this out.
So back to Tulpas.
Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker.
Okay. So back to Tulpas. One of the things that I'm kind of like stuck on here is that if this is a true phenomenon, what happens to like people who are unintentionally obsessive or prone to anxiety, right? Where they can't help but think of negative things constantly.
I'm sorry, I was pouring beer.
People with anxiety, they can't help but think of negative things constantly.
So are they just a force just pumping out negative tulpas?
No, because the creation of a tulpa is intentional.
Wait, I thought you said it could be unintentional.
No.
Because that was one of my questions. Like, can it be unintentional?
The tulpa has to start with a person with the intention to create it, because it takes work.
But then, in order for it to manifest, other people
have to believe.
Yes.
And then it can
So
manifest.
As long as the first person is intentional about it,
has
everyone
to be
else
intentional
can be
about it.
So it's not just constantly thinking about the same thought.
Yeah.
It's constantly thinking about the same thought with energy applied to shape it into something.
Yeah, not you can't just accidentally be a tulpamancer. It takes years of work and practice. You know. Yeah, tulpamancers, they're an interesting people, and I was very impressed.
Were you? That doesn't sound genuine.
That's 100% genuine.
It's 100% genuine. It's just really strange, because I wanted to do the topic because I was thinking about just that whole idea, beings created through thought and through belief, and like, you know, because there's the whole thing about Slender Man is it's like, well, if enough people believed in this, maybe Slender Man does exist, because there were those attacks that happened in like 2 or 3 states one year where people said that Slender Man told them to attack their friend in the woods, and like,
there were 2 girls that did that.
Yeah, it was a big conversation of, well, so many of these young people believe in Slender Man, maybe he really does exist as a tulpa.
And he apparently has like some mansion in the woods or something crazy.
That is weird stuff. But, and, you know, I want to talk about that and then the idea of just our thoughts and the effects of thoughts on reality. But then looking into it, I found that whole community of people who genuinely practice this and really, you know, a lot of people actually use it to get through life. Like, it's their coping mechanism, sort of. They create this imaginary friend that helps them get through social situations, helps them overcome fears.
Sounds like it starts with people with murky backgrounds, like rough experiences.
Well, maybe people with a lot of anxiety.
An escapism mechanism.
Yeah. It's just a way of having a friend in this cruel, cruel world, and we shouldn't criticize it. Like Brian's body pillow.
Wait, so the listeners don't know Brian walked away.
I do
So
actually have a body
mock
pillow.
him while he's gone.
No, I'm not talking about specifically like
A waifu?
a large body pillow. Yeah, I'm talking about like an anime body pillow.
Like a human shaped.
No, it just has a human artwork
Has some
on
tentacles coming out of it.
it. No, Brian puts his tentacles in it, right? Hentai. That's what happened.
What about
I don't
it?
know.
I'm interested.
You should do an episode on hentai
I should do an
sometime,
episode on
Brian.
hentai. Why?
Why not?
There's so much.
Oh my god.
So now we know
let's do that. Let's do that for your topic.
Hentai? Oh,
I'll take 3 hentai, please.
right now?
Yeah, let's go hear it. What
Just
do you
name
know?
them?
What do you know? Name your hentai knowledge right now. Drop it. What is it?
Like the best ones?
No, just what exactly is hentai?
What
What's
is
the
your
appeal of
go-to
it?
when you need something?
What is what?
What's the appeal of hentai? Why do people watch hentai? And explain what it is to the listeners.
It's animated porn from Japan.
I thought there was a little more in depth to that. I thought there was a tentacle aspect.
No, for real. Like, don't they always have some kind of like
Tentacles?
something weird with it?
So what's that called?
It can be like legitimate human to human.
Yeah, it's called tags. You have your. It's like any other porn. You have what you like.
Okay,
and
so
it has
what's
a
the tentacle thing called?
tentacle?
I thought there was like some kind of cutesy Japanese name for it.
I'm sure there is, but it's just called tentacle on the tags or monster.
Oh. Well, that's Adventures in Porn with Brian, our new segment.
All right. John became uncomfortable and was just like, oh.
No, I just had nothing more to say on hentai.
Okay. You brought it up. I'm going to let you run with it. I'm just here to answer questions.
But the weirdest thing about the Tulpa stuff to me was that, you know, some people use them to cuddle. It's like, what?
They say there's an anime that has a 6-episode arc exclusively about tulpas and how to defeat them.
Oh, really? How do you defeat a Tulpa? Kill the person that believes in
thinking
it?
about it.
No, in the show, it was it's called Inspector. It's paranormal.
Gadget?
It's a paranormal like detective that goes around helping supernatural beings like solve problems. And they get this one where this woman on a message board created this ghost that goes around and kills people with a iron beam. And the whole thing was that she's trying to get it so popular that it becomes real and actually goes around killing people. And the whole time is them trying to figure out what it is, how to defeat it. And then like the last 2 episodes is the inspector is on the message board, like talking to all the people and trying to convince them like, oh, this isn't a ghost. This is just some person. It's like, oh, and they're going through arguments on like, how did this guy actually die then? And they started going through and they ended up convincing that this person who's supposed to be the ghost isn't actually dead. They're just alive and trying to get their name back into light.
So what that got me thinking about is, what if you created a tulpa within a person? So
My heart is a tulpa.
like the idea that she's talking about this thing that goes around killing people with a iron beam or something. Well, what if the idea spread so much that somebody really latched onto it, and
Or if you
then
were
they
to-
started doing the thing?
Yeah.
And-
Or if you were to sit there and just every time you see somebody mention this tulpa to them, like force this thought into their brain by telling them over and over again.
Yeah.
Could, as you said,
I mean,
you
that's
know,
essentially what
anxiety-
happened with Slender Man.
Yeah.
It was just
It was just a
always there.
story that's read from a game and a creepypasta.
Right. But if you said like anxiety doesn't breed a tulpa because it's not an intentional thing, do the intentions of someone else matter? Right? So, like, the person receiving the suggestion, they don't intend to create a tulpa. They may not even know what a tulpa is. But because the person giving them the suggestion has an intent to create a tulpa, does that create a tulpa?
I don't know. It could be. That'd be interesting to create a tulpa for somebody that just follows them around and tortures them, and then they believe in it, and so they see it.
And if it becomes like a telephone game where you start with the base tulpa, but then something gets added on when everyone else believes, does that automatically influence what the tulpa becomes?
Okay, I'm going to say there's another...
It's all speculation.
There's another TV show that went into tulpas. You know what that TV show was? It was Supernatural.
Well,
and
that show covered a lot of things.
I never watched
quite
that.
poorly.
Yeah, but in that one, it was tulpas. The spirit that was created to like haunt this farmhouse was just some website that these guys made up. And then, it's got a spooky story associated with it. But so many people started believing that they didn't intend for it to be real. It was just supposed to be a ghost story. But it became real because on the internet, so many people were like, that's really fucking interesting. And they'd start talking about it and doing all this shit. But they had it that when they figured out it was a tulpa, because there were none of the ways they were fighting it were working against spirits like they were supposed to. They found the guys who ran the website and convinced them that you got to make it so we can kill this because it's attacking and killing people. So they tried on the website to be like, the ghost is it can be affected by solid metal iron objects, because that's how they fought spirits. You hit it with iron and it would go away for a minute.
What if...
But they kept rewriting it, and so many people got into it, and they were like, oh no, that's dumb, this is how it would be. And they changed it so much that the majority of the people who
I
believed
think I actually saw that episode.
would be controlling it. So even though the guys on the original page were saying that, oh, it's now susceptible to this, there was another faction already that had said, oh, this thing, it can't be killed, it only it lives here and blah, blah, blah. And they just, I think that was like one of the only ones where they couldn't beat it. They just had to leave it alone.
So their take on it is that the majority rules.
Yeah, like once it's out there and it becomes real, whatever the vast majority of people believe it to be is what it's going to be.
So,
well,
let
me interject. So, in that vein of thought, wouldn't that make the SCP wiki extraordinarily dangerous?
Yes. And it would be fucking awesome.
No, it wouldn't.
Yes, it would.
And that SCP, all of that got me going back to the idea of what if we can change things through our beliefs, if we can affect reality, what if we could rewrite history by believing something happened that never happened? And the main thing I was thinking about was the creepypasta, the Russian sleep experiment.
Hey,
that
fuck you.
is a creepypasta. But
right.
A lot of people know that story and don't know that it's a creepypasta. They
don't
believe
know that
it
story.
actually
You don't know
happened.
that story?
I don't.
You got to read it. It's a good story.
We'll do an episode on it or something, because a lot
It's not
of people...
an episode. It's just a story. There's nothing behind
Good
it.
story, though. We could tell the story. But a lot of people actually believe that it happened.
Right.
And so it's like all of these people that don't know it's a creepypasta genuinely believe that this happened. Well, what if through their belief that it happened, we could rewrite the past and make it have happened?
I feel like the whole idea of tulpas, though, is that you're creating it here and now, and it's created now. Like, I don't know if you can adjust the past just
all
because...
of our history that we have is collective consciousness. It's just our belief that this is what history was. This is what happened.
And documentation.
Well, yeah, documentation, but if we create documentation, we can create a false history.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't make the history exist. It just makes it like falsified history.
Well, the idea, though, that at base level of Tulpa, the idea of our thoughts being able to create things and affect reality.
No,
So
it brings things. Our thoughts bring it into reality,
which is affecting it. Bringing it into it affects it.
Yes, but you're not just going to create an entire lab out of nothing. Creating your little tulpa friend is one thing.
But it's in the past.
Yeah.
So how do we know?
But you can't get the majority to believe that story because it's a creepypasta.
Well, would you believe that you could also remove history?
Yeah.
You really think
Why
if
not?
everyone
If everyone
genuinely...
quit believing that something happened, it didn't happen.
Well, that's
right.
that's called
You know what I
forgetting.
mean? Yeah,
Right.
Like, I don't know if that's...
You're actually both right, I think.
History is a shared reality. if no one believes that something happened that did actually happen, well, technically it didn't happen because it will not be
I don't agree with
about
that
anymore.
No,
I don't
it
agree with
still
that because it
happened.
still
It's just
happened.
been
You just
forgotten.
forgot.
It depends.
Yeah.
if our reality is absolute and not subjective experience.
I don't know. There are a lot of things in history that happened that I did not know happened, and that doesn't mean it didn't happen. So I don't know. That's kind of how I look at it.
But even knowing it happened would alter the way you interact with reality, right?
No, I get what Jonathan's trying to say.
If no one believes it happened, it may have actually happened, but people don't react in a way.
As far as our current reality would go, it may as well not have happened.
Yeah, I get that, but it doesn't like physically or whatever word you would use there remove it from actually having
But we
happened.
can't go back and observe the past physically, so we don't know.
I get it.
We don't know.
But if we get in a rocket ship
Because there's
and
no-
get a message, we could go back
Except
and see
for
it.
except for documentation.
But we don't know that there is any sort of physical impact on the universe in the past. All we know is present. All we can observe is present right now. So, and if everything that has ever happened, if we're going outside of like what I talked about in episode 1, the idea that all of time exists simultaneously, if you go outside of that, then there's no record that anything has ever happened. All we have is now.
Yeah, you
go
don't
outs-
know that anything beyond this morning ever actually happened. You could have just
We
woken
can
up,
only
and
observe
that could have
right
just,
now.
Like,
no, I
blinked into existence this
I
morning.
get it. I don't know if I fall into that same line of thinking.
I'm gonna say,
No, it's
John,
just a theory.
No, I get it. Yeah, I get it. I'm just it makes sense,
what
but
I'm
to
here
me, I'm not saying that's the theory I'm going with.
I'm gonna say it's like your theory in the first episode was more of a fourth dimensional time as a place we can go to if we can see it or so you would be saying that fuck, I lost it. But
Yes.
it's fourth dimensional time as a place. It's not we can observe all of time because we can go to it.
Yeah, that's episode 1. That's a specific theory. That's a specific line of thinking that
Yes.
all of time exists simultaneously as a physical location in the universe. But if that's not true,
Also
if time
remember,
does not exist anywhere but the present, we can only observe the present, so therefore that is all that exists, well then we don't have a past. It does not exist in the universe. It's only in our collective consciousness.
because if we were to go to the past, that would be the present.
Yeah, so if our past only exists in our collective consciousness, if you change what people believe about the past, then
But that's
for
not
all purposes, you've changed the past
That's
because
not-
we can't go back and observe that it was different than what we're saying.
I'm gonna say that's not a tulpa then, that's just
No, it's not.
changing everyone's
I'm just talking about thought affecting reality.
Yeah, that's not affecting reality. You're just affecting thought.
Well, thought is reality. Our thoughts are our perception of
No.
reality. Our perception of reality determines what reality is.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes, that's how consciousness works.
Okay, just because, let's say, all of America doesn't know the atrocities that go on somewhere else in the world, doesn't mean they're not still going
Well, no,
on.
because in present time, there is a conscious observer of that. We're not talking about just Americans. We're talking about the past. We're not talking about something going on in a different place that maybe we may not know is happening. Somebody knows it's happening because they're there.
it's
Yeah.
a
That's
part of
present.
the global consciousness.
That is present. It is in the global consciousness. If it is not in there, then it
if it's not in
does
the global
exist.
consciousness, then it never happened to begin with. There would be no reason to think about it.
Exactly. So if you remove something from the global consciousness,
That means it didn't
it
happen.
didn't happen.
But then there would have never been a
What
record to
Jonathan
begin
is saying
with.
is that it might as well have not happened. Like it could
Yeah,
have.
There is no tangible way to prove that it ever
That's
did.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
and
So
so
this goes back to
therefore,
the-
did it happen?
but consciousness also isn't tangible.
No, but it does affect reality. Our
Yeah.
conscious observation of the universe
Jason.
is what allows it to be.
I'm used to not being allowed to talk.
No, you can talk.
Go ahead.
So the idea here is if a tree falls in the forest,
And
does
no
it make
one-
a sound?
Well, that depends.
It still
So-
makes a sound.
Yeah, it still makes a sound. That's a physical thing.
But if an event happens and no one's conscious of it, did it happen?
No.
That's the argument here. It's the same
And
argument.
it really just depends on which you choose to believe.
Okay.
If
so
there's no knowledge of it happening, it didn't happen. Now, when someone goes and sees the felled tree, Well, then now we know it happened.
But we don't
But
know that it
until
made a
we observe
sound.
that, it didn't happen.
So if I fire a bullet into the air and it comes down and kills somebody and no one ever finds the body, did I kill somebody?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
But no one ever...
Well, because the person you
Somebody
killed
died.
consciously
There was a physical
experienced
Consciousness
that.
disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I rape somebody,
If I rape somebody and there's no one in the forest to hear it, did I rape someone?
I'd have to kill him afterwards.
you always manage to make it worse with everything you ever say.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Okay, so there was this book in 2006 called The Secret.
Mhm.
I don't know if any of y'all
The
remember
law of
this.
attraction.
Yeah, the idea that thoughts manifest reality.
Yeah, they took an old idea and branded it nicely, got it on Oprah, and made millions.
Yeah. So, so I guess really it has no merit in this conversation, but I was trying.
No, it does.
The
It does
Oprah
have
sticker.
merit, but the law of attraction is more of a personal basis. The first portion, or the first mention of it I've seen, like the idea of the law of attraction, they don't use that term. That's a new term, but it's in a book that I actually read because of Brian.
What did I recommend? That
As a Man Thinketh
That's it.
is essentially, it was written in like what, 1903,
Something like that.
and
Things
it's
have maybe
about
changed.
the idea
then.
that your life, your world is what you make it. Your thought drives everything in your life. Everything about the position you're in is a direct result of your thinking and your actions. So if you change your thinking, you'll change your actions, and your whole life will change.
So it's not so much about shaping reality.
It's more personal.
Okay,
Yeah,
it's
it's
about
about
changing the way
your
you
own-
react, not.
Yeah, it's about affecting your own
Yeah.
It's not.
reality.
I think I have 100 Bitcoin, so I have 100 Bitcoin.
Yeah,
It's-
no, it's not.
It's,
a
I
direct
think I want
creation.
100 Bitcoin,
It's
so
like
I work
the
to get
earliest-
100 Bitcoin.
It's like the earliest version of I want to work out, but I don't want to, but I have to convince myself to do it so I can be healthy. And that it's like the earliest I own book wise of motivational.
And it's really just a big book. I haven't read it, but it sounds like a big
It's
book of
83
just
pages.
Wait, it's a very popular book, is what he means by big.
Oh, is it?
yeah, but it's
I don't know.
really
It's
and it's really
64
just
pages.
64.
and
okay.
it's really just it sounds like a drawn out explanation of like personal responsibility
Well,
and self-sustaining.
the
I would
thing
say
that
read
I
it.
liked a lot about the book is that, like, yes, that's an idea I've heard a million times, but about, taking responsibility for your own actions, changing your thinking and the way you perceive things in order to improve your life. But the interesting concept they talk about in there is your perception of others. And the idea that when someone looks at someone who's wealthy, they say, oh, they must have lied and cheated to get there and everything. Well, it's like, you may see that because they may have done some of those things to get there, but they wouldn't have gotten there if they did not have a lot of other really good qualities. Just like someone who's had a horrible life, they're very poor, they may be homeless. You can pity them because they're in a poor position, but as good and nice as they may be, they have a lot of bad qualities that have led them to that life. It's the idea that everything about your life position is a direct consequence of your own thinking and actions. It's personal responsibility on a huge level, but it's also about understanding others in that everyone does have good and bad qualities.
Well, I'm
And you
of
just
the
have to
thought
recognize it within yourself.
I'm of the thought that there are a ton of things that you cannot control that will happen and will impact
No,
what
absolutely.
you do, but it is entirely in your control to navigate that.
Well, you determine the way that you respond
Yes,
to
exactly.
anything that happens to you.
Exactly.
Obviously, there are things out of your control, life circumstances. You can get in a car accident. Somebody can just crash their car into you. That has it's nothing to do with your actions.
But then where you
But
go from
where
there
you go from
is
there
yes.
is what matters.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you
wallow in
quit your
self-pity.
job, wallow in self-pity, and lay in a bed for the rest of your life because you hurt your leg? Or do you heal up and get back to it? It's all about just picking yourself up by the bootstraps.
You're not allowed to say that.
What?
Why not?
No, I'm kidding, but that was
Well, people have
working
proven you
hard
can
to get
do
out of it.
with enough pulleys and levers and
Yeah.
Yeah.
actually
Well, that's exactly the point, though. Like, you determine how to pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
That is every single pulley and levy and whatever that you decide to put there.
There's a swing somewhere in there.
But yeah, this probably all needs to be cut out.
Cut out.
Because it's a little political, so I didn't know if that was
political.
No, a little political's fine. It's
I mean, we did discuss Hunter Biden's laptop.
it's just
so.
there's certain topics that are very sensitive to the culture.
So the Capitol Hill.
Well,
right?
I used AOC by name, and that could piss people off.
Well, and we
but-
try to not stick with like up-to-date current news because obviously there's a delay in when things happen and when the podcast comes out.
Yeah, we got like 3 weeks.
That episode we recorded on December 6th, that came out on January 6th. Did not age well.
That's awesome.
I wasn't there for that one.
That's the one we talked about, Hunter Biden's laptop.
Oh, that was the Tunguska event one.
Yeah, that episode really went off the rails.
Yeah, I was kind of annoyed. You guys, like 3 minutes of talking about it, and then, oh yeah, we're gonna fucking fly off of this now.
Well, maybe you should make sure you're actually here.
Maybe I shouldn't
And
get
be a part of the
fucking
conversation.
sick.
If you bring a topic, you can really drive the conversation on your episode and
Is
make
this all
sure it
gonna
doesn't
be-
go anywhere you don't
Is
want it
this all
to.
gonna stay on the
I
episode?
get to control the topic. How did Void go, John? How many times did you cut my ass off while I was trying to explain so
Listen,
you could
listen,
bitch your
Brian,
own?
Scoot
listen,
back a little.
Brian, listen. I want you to picture a gumball machine
Yeah.
with a stick of dynamite.
This will. This
come
will be.
on, man.
This is a tulpa.
That episode was so hard because when we talked about the void, we thought about like paranormal, the idea of the abyss, the void.
Well,
this,
I'm sorry. Did you
darkness.
Well, I'm
and,
gonna interrupt.
And you're talking about the Oort cloud.
You mentioned tulpa. So are our social media profiles tulpas of ourselves?
No, they're
Because
avatars.
We create figment, imaginary versions of ourselves to
No,
display
It's an
publicly.
avatar.
that's an idealized version.
So what's
of yourself.
Yeah.
explain
That's all it is.
Avatar versus tulpa then?
Avatar is
Like
something
Like, like
that-
in your mind.
An avatar is just basically a representation of you. It
Yes.
isn't you, but it's a representation.
Yeah, you
of
don't
So a
believe-
social
So
media
you
profile
can
is
never
essentially
be a tulpa, is what you're saying?
no,
or
you can't be a tulpa
okay,
unless.
but a tulpa can be based on you.
unless you are one and you don't know it, and you only exist because other people believe
shit.
you do. What if all of us are tulpas and we only exist because we all believe each other exist?
Jesus.
If no one knows that somebody exists, they don't exist. More about the collective consciousness.
Because everything is just a signal in your brain, you can't actually
Yeah.
determine the origin of that signal.
We validate our own
So-
existence through other people's observation. You know what I'm saying?
So the idea of being
that goes back
you
to
get the physical sensation of being touched, but that could also be that signal in your brain could have originated from within your brain, not from an
I
actual
don't
nerve
think-
ending.
Well, we know that we exist because we have been born, and that was a process that was observed.
no, John. I think
No,
You're-
it wasn't-
you're looking at
it was
it-
that we were told about.
We were told we
it's
were born.
it's a person thing.
Oh my God, Jonathan.
Because everybody knows.
Let's go down that hole.
Everyone who is alive is known to exist by at least one or two people.
Exactly.
But when you look at it like that, and it's like, oh, the person you don't know doesn't exist. No, that's just like, that's looking at it like, oh, I don't know anybody in this country, so that country doesn't fucking exist.
No, you
no,
keep
no,
bringing it to a level of like locality. It's not about that.
It's not about, I didn't mean to say country. Like, you don't know anybody in this area at all. You know nobody. You know the area exists, but you don't know a single
But
person.
they know that
it's not even
they
about
know each
locality.
other. It has nothing to do with locality.
I think where he's trying to get to is this existence is a tulpa. You are the only thing that's real. Everything
The
else.
world exists because I believe it.
No. But kind of, yes. The idea that there is no one else.
Mm-hmm.
You are a consciousness constructing the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then wouldn't you have some level of control over the world around you? You have some level of control over yourself, but
it
you
may be-
cannot control the world
It
around
may
you.
be unconsciously that you are controlling it, but don't know that you are.
Yeah.
So,
I
like,
get the idea.
Like when you
Coincidences
know
that
you're in the
people buy
Matrix and you have superpowers,
Or ju-
basically,
ju- or
you know,
just
because
the-
you know you're in control.
like lucid dreaming.
Yeah,
Just the coincidences that we buy into, like, I'm going to wear my lucky underwear when my favorite sports team is playing because they win when I wear this underwear. Are they winning because you're wearing the underwear, or because you're creating this universe in your mind? You make them win by wearing the underwear.
well, until they lose.
It goes like this, like the idea that, like solipsism, where I only know that I exist. So...
But you wouldn't exist if nobody else knew you existed. But would you know you exist?
It depends. If I'm the creator of this universe...
You're going to make everyone know that you exist?
Well, prove to me that you exist, Victor.
Well, but that's the
How
thing.
do I know that you're not a construct? You're an NPC. Like, you're an NPC that I've created, that that you're not just a figment of my imagination. How would you prove that you exist?
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but because something is impossible to prove does not mean that it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it exists, but how do you prove you're a conscious being?
I don't know. I don't think we'll ever prove
exactly.
that. Exactly. But that also doesn't mean like you're kind of, that theory really ignores physical realities and also just says if I don't know of something, or if a bunch of people don't know of something, like just because you don't know that something exists and can't prove that something exists doesn't mean it doesn't.
Yeah, well, it's about observation. Like,
no, I 100% get what you're saying. I just don't know if I agree
only
with
exists because of conscious observation.
I'm going to say this sounds a lot just like deep-rooted narcissism at that aspect.
It's called solipsism.
Okay, whatever.
It's the idea that you are the only conscious being in the universe.
It is, you are the only thing in your universe.
Yeah.
You are the only conscious living thing. Everything else is something you've created around yourself.
Yeah, they're NPCs that you've created to stimulate yourself.
Yeah, so that sounds pretty stupid.
But you didn't do it consciously. It's
a theory.
It's a philosophical thing.
Yes,
it's called solipsism. That's all it is. I'm not saying I believe that.
I'm
just saying
it just sounds dumb.
It's a theory that's out there.
But
no, I get it. Go ahead.
But to your argument of like the physicality of things like proves that there's things outside of yourself.
Well, I'm not saying proves, but just because you can't prove that it's a physical reality doesn't mean that it's not a physical reality. We just can't wrap our heads around how to prove that.
Right, because
I'm really saying.
Because when you touch something, that's a biochemical message being sent, through nerves and neurons to tell you something's there. But again, you don't know where that signal originated. Did it actually originate from neurons? And are you actually touching something?
It's like,
or is it just an extension of this reality?
But that's what I mean by it ignores physical reality, because it assumes that it's all just cognitively created by whoever's thinking it, which could be true. But again, just because we can't prove that that's not true doesn't mean the opposite isn't true.
It's like the thing we talked about last night, where the idea that it's impossible to physically prove that there is a God, because all evidence is based on anecdotal observation and personal experiences, which is not physical evidence. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people believe that there's a God, but they can never prove physically that he exists, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. It's just the way we verify things is physically.
Right. Well, on that thought, any closing arguments? No?
I don't know if I fall in line with that theory, but it's an interesting one.
No, I don't either.
No, it is. And I'm not claiming you do. I don't know.
But I've got to pee quite badly.
I do too.
So, Brian?
I'm not done with my closing.
Okay.
Yeah, so tulpas, I don't believe at all they can be used to regenerate or rewrite history at all. I think tulpas
I don't
are
think
meant
anybody
to...
claimed that, but okay.
No.
He did.
No, I said what if.
Fuck you. No, I think
it's an interesting theory.
Any of the theories I present, I don't believe in. I'm just presenting the ideas.
I think tulpas are just singular beings that are brought into existence by mass belief in something.
Do you believe they come into physical existence?
I think they can, but they're not events. They're just objects or beings. You're not going to get a fucking city to just be gone because people believe it. It's like everything.
You subscribe to the idea that Slender Man could possibly exist because enough people believed in him. So
it's like every other supernatural
entities or objects you believe can be created into popular
but you're not
consciousness.
getting entire scenarios to become real just because you say so.
But that could also be because, like, Jonathan's whole point is, or not
It's
your,
not about
not
whether
your
or not
point.
it physically happened. It's about the fact that we can't prove otherwise. And so if it's globally in the global consciousness that everyone believes it happened, well, for all perception of reality, then it did.
And to kind of play devil's advocate with Jonathan's theory, which I've already said I don't really fall in line with, but the theory would posit that enough people have to, like, for something to disappear out of history, you know, quote unquote, everyone would have to. And the more, it's probably easier to forget a single individual than it would be like an entire event.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean it can't happen, but it becomes more
All memory would have to be
more
erased.
impossible. And it,
Yeah, it's difficult.
yeah.
So yeah,
On
I think
that
it's dope. Tulpas, cool. Everything else, pretty stupid.
On that note,
Have fun, everybody.
thanks.